It seems like only yesterday I was sitting right here, watching the world go by. So much has changed, but the stone remains.
I'm Henry Caldwell. I'm 62 years old, and 3 months ago, I signed away everything I had to my ex-wife. The house, both cars, the consulting firm I built with my own hands, every account, every asset, all of it. My lawyer begged me to stop. My ex-wife's sister smiled from the courtroom benches like she was watching a show she'd already spoiled for herself. And her new boyfriend, a man young enough to be my son, actually checked his phone and laughed while the judge spoke. Margaret, my wife of 26 years, sat there calm, polished, victorious. She looked at me the way you look at an empty chair you're about to give away. She thought she'd won. That confidence lasted less than a minute, because when her attorney finished reading the final clause of the agreement, her smile slipped. Just for a second. Most people missed it. I didn't. Before I tell you why, let me take you back. Not 3 months, not even 3 years. Let me take you back almost a decade to the moment I stopped being a husband and started becoming a ghost in my own life. From the outside, Margaret and I were the kind of couple people envied. A large brick house in a quiet Illinois suburb, 2 cars in the driveway, a consulting firm with my name on the door, dinner parties where Margaret handled the charm and I handled the numbers. I was good at what I did. Before I ever started my own firm, I was an operations analyst, systems, risk, forecasting. I understood how things broke long before they actually failed, but when Margaret suggested I leave my position and build something of my own, I trusted her. "We'll do this together," she said. "You focus on work. I'll handle everything else." And I believed her. Over time, everything else became everything. She managed the accounts. She handled the paperwork. She insisted it was easier that way. "You hate admin," she'd say. "You hate stress." And she was right. I hated stress. I hated conflict even more. So I stopped asking questions. The firm did well, then great. Then, at least on paper, exceptional. But slowly, without me noticing, my access disappeared. Statements stopped arriving at the house. Passwords changed. My name remained on documents, but my fingerprints vanished from decisions. When I turned 58, Margaret threw me a birthday party and gifted me a new watch. She told everyone it was a celebration of how far we'd come. What I didn't know was that the watch was financed. What I didn't know was that the firm was bleeding money. What I didn't know was that my marriage was already over. The first real crack appeared the night I opened the wrong filing cabinet. Margaret had gone out for what she called a charity board meeting. I needed a tax document for a client audit. Her home office, once our shared space, was unlocked. I found the folder easily. What I wasn't supposed to find were the envelopes behind it. Final notice. Delinquent account. Immediate action required. I sat down in her chair and kept opening envelopes until my hands stopped shaking. The firm wasn't struggling. It was collapsing. Loans stacked on top of loans. Credit lines extended to hide losses. My signature replicated on documents I'd never seen. Over $2 million in exposure, and most of it hidden from me deliberately. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't panic. I photographed everything, every page, every signature, every date. Then I put it all back exactly where it belonged and went to bed beside a woman who was already planning my exit. I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, I called the only person I trusted completely, my old colleague, Daniel Moore. Daniel worked in compliance now. He understood financial damage the way surgeons understand trauma. He didn't interrupt as I spoke. When I finished, he said one sentence. "She's been preparing for this longer than you think." Over the next year, I learned the truth quietly. Margaret had been shifting assets, reassigning ownership, building a narrative where she was the engine and I was the liability. And then there was someone else. I didn't catch them together. I didn't need to. The late nights, the sudden interest in fitness, the way she corrected my posture in public like I embarrassed her by existing. One night, she said it out loud without meaning to. "You should try to keep up, Henry. People notice these things." That's when I knew. By the time she filed for divorce, everything was already arranged. She had the better lawyer, the cleaner story, the illusion of control, and I let her take it all. Because while she was busy winning the war she could see, I was preparing for the one she couldn't. I didn't confront her when I first noticed the name, Claire. She said it too casually, too often, like it meant nothing, like repetition would make it invisible. What would have been the point anyway? By then, our marriage was already a performance, two people reciting lines out of habit. I wasn't trying to save it. I just needed to know how much time I had before the curtain finally fell. One evening, Eleanor left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went upstairs to shower. I was pouring tea. The screen lit up. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear the gray jacket. I like it." XO, I didn't touch the phone. Didn't need to. The preview said enough. After that, the signs stacked up quickly. Deleted browsing history. Passwords changed. Calls taken in the garage with the door half closed, her voice dropping when she heard my footsteps. But here's what Eleanor never understood about me. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't drowning in jealousy or rage. I'd already mourned the marriage years ago. What I was doing was watching, listening, documenting. I spent most of my career assessing risk, corporate systems, financial exposure, human error. I knew better than most that people reveal the truth when they think no one is looking, and Eleanor was getting careless. The moment she showed her hand came sooner than I expected. The first time I met Claire Whitman, she had Eleanor's arm looped through hers like it belonged there. We were at my ex-mother-in-law's birthday dinner, a monthly ritual at Judith Parker's immaculate colonial outside Boston, the kind of house where everything matched and nothing felt lived in. I'd attended those dinners for nearly a decade, always aware that I was tolerated, never embraced. That night, Eleanor walked in with Claire like she was unveiling a prize. "Everyone, this is Claire," she said brightly. "She's been helping me with some new investment opportunities." Claire was 28, perfect hair, practiced smile, expensive dress that looked just a little too eager to impress. I spent enough years auditing luxury goods to notice details most people missed. The stitching on her handbag wasn't quite right. The hardware tone slightly off. No one else noticed. They were too busy fawning. Judith clasped Claire's hands with delight. Eleanor finally found someone with ambition, she announced, loud enough for the room to hear. Then she turned to me with that familiar thin smile. "Arthur, be a dear and help Linda bring out the appetizers." I spent that dinner in the kitchen and the margins, watching my wife introduce her mistress to the family like a future replacement. My grandson sat beside me, confused. "Grandpa, who's that lady? Why is she sitting next to Grandma?" "She's just someone passing through," I said quietly. Claire laughed at something Eleanor whispered. Eleanor's hand rested at the small of her back. Judith beamed with approval. I remember thinking, the bag isn't the only fake thing at this table, but Claire wasn't my enemy. She was a symptom. The real danger was the woman she didn't yet realize was already emptying the vault. 6 months before the divorce was finalized, Eleanor sat across from me at our dining table and spoke like she was delivering quarterly results. "I want a divorce." No apology, no explanation. 5 words, clean and efficient. I'd known it was coming. I'd prepared for it, even welcomed it. Still, hearing it out loud felt like a door closing on 30 years of my life. "I see," I said. "What are you proposing?" She leaned back, wearing the same expression she used in boardrooms. "I'm keeping the house, the cars, the accounts, the firm, everything we built." "And me?" She shrugged. "You can keep your things, personal items. I'm not interested in dragging this out." No mention of fairness, no mention of history. "You're sure?" I asked. "Everything?" "All of it," she said, smiling. "I'm being generous. Most people would try to ruin you." I looked at her then and realized how little she saw me, how convinced she was that I'd already lost. "All right," I said quietly. "I'll review whatever you send." She expected tears, resistance, maybe anger, not compliance. Her lawyer's office was exactly what you'd expect. Glass walls, leather chairs, a view meant to remind you who held the power. I came alone. No lawyer, no briefcase, just an old blazer and a notebook. The proposal was thorough, ruthless. She would retain sole ownership of every asset. I would walk away with my clothes and my dignity. "No alimony, no share of the business," her attorney said smoothly. "Given the circumstances, this is quite fair." Eleanor watched me read, pleased. "He doesn't need counsel," she said dismissively. "Arthur wouldn't understand half of this anyway." I closed the folder and met her eyes. "I'll need a few days," I said. She blinked, then smiled. "Take all the time you want. The outcome won't change." Within a week, she'd rewritten our entire marriage for public consumption. "He's being difficult," I heard through mutual acquaintances. "He wants things he never earned." People stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. Sympathy came laced with judgment. Judith called one evening. "Don't embarrass yourself," she said coldly. "My daughter built that life. You were lucky to be part of it." That same night, while reviewing records I'd quietly collected for years, I found it. A second mortgage on our house. Taken out 18 months earlier. No signature, no consent, illegal. I photographed it, filed it, and felt something steady in my chest. Let them think I was weak. Let them think I was finished. The people who underestimate you always leave the biggest blind spots. She looked at me and said my last name, like it carried weight. "Mr. Hale, tell me everything." So I did. 3 years of quiet preparation poured out onto her desk. Bank statements, loan documents, copies of forged signatures, emails, dates, times, patterns, my wife's affair, her demands, the pressure from her family, the way everyone treated me like I was already erased. I had arranged it all in folders myself, color-coded, labeled, clean. The lawyer, Margaret Lowell, went through each page without rushing. She made notes on a yellow pad, her pen steady, her face unreadable. When she finally finished, she looked up at me with something I hadn't felt directed at me in a very long time: respect. "You've done remarkable work," she said. "Most people come to me panicking, crying, broken. You came prepared." "I'm not interested in a fight," I told her. "I'm interested in being free." She nodded slowly. "Then let's talk about what that actually looks like." She explained the law carefully. Community property, equal division, my legal right to half of everything. I stopped her there. "Half of what?" She raised an eyebrow. $4.6 million in debt, I said. "That's what my wife actually built. She still thinks she's wealthy." Margaret smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, honestly. "You understand this better than she does." "I've had years to understand it," I said. "She's still living in the illusion." Then she leaned forward. "So tell me, Mr. Hale, what do you actually want?" I thought about starting over at 62, about the small savings account I'd hidden away, about waking up without being managed, monitored, dismissed. I want her to get exactly what she's asking for. That made her pause. She reached for a thick legal book and opened it to a page already marked. "When one party insists on taking full ownership of marital assets," she said, "they can also be assigned full responsibility for the debts attached to those assets." She tapped the page. "It's called a liability assumption clause." She looked up at me. "If your wife wants everything, she can have everything. The house, the cars, the business, the debt, all of it." I felt something settle inside me. Calm, clarity. "She won't read it," I said. Margaret nodded. "Then we protect you properly. We include a waiver of independent financial review. She signs acknowledging she chose not to investigate further." "Her lawyer will warn her," I said. "Yes," Margaret agreed. "But will she listen?" I pictured my wife, her confidence, her belief that she was always the smartest person in the room. "No," I said. "She won't." Margaret pulled out a clean legal pad. "Then here's the plan. We give her exactly what she demanded, everything. We bury the liability clause deep in the document, fully legal, fully disclosed, and we wait." "And if she reads it?" "Then nothing changes," Margaret said. "But I don't think she will." Neither did I. The pressure started almost immediately. Her new partner called me first. Smooth voice, fake concern. "Arthur, I know this is uncomfortable," he said, "but the divorce timeline is making some financing tricky. If you could speed things up, it would really help." Speed things up, like I was the obstacle. Then came the emails from my wife, sharp, threatening, documented without her realizing it. Her mother left voicemails about dignity and reputation. Old friends offered advice about letting go and accepting reality. But one phrase stuck with me: "The financing is getting complicated." That told me everything. She needed clean ownership on paper. She was trying to leverage assets already drowning in debt to fund her new life. She wasn't just cruel, she was desperate. When I showed the messages to Margaret, she almost laughed. "She's pressuring you while signing a waiver," she said. "She's doing our job for us." The family meeting was her mother's idea. "We'll settle this like adults," she said, summoning everyone to the dining room that had always made me feel small. My wife sat at the head of the table, her mother beside her, relatives lining the sides like witnesses. I was placed at the far end, exactly where they thought I belonged. "She's agreed to our terms," her mother announced before I could speak. "He'll sign this week." My wife smiled like she'd won something. I knew he'd come around. I kept my hands folded, quiet, cooperative. "All I want," I said softly, "is peace." They mistook that for surrender. The night before the final hearing, I sat alone in my small apartment. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I reviewed the agreement one last time. 52 pages, liability clause exactly where it needed to be, waiver properly signed, everything legal, everything clear for anyone who chose to read. She wouldn't read. I didn't sleep much that night, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, I need to say this. If you're listening to this and you feel invisible in your own life, controlled, dismissed, made to believe you're incapable or replaceable, understand this. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Patience doesn't mean surrender, and preparation changes everything. For 3 years, I stayed quiet, not because I agreed with what was being done to me, but because I was building something in that quiet, a way out, a safety net, a future no one could steal once it existed. I've learned this much at 62 years old. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. And knowing your worth doesn't require permission from anyone else. That morning, I dropped off the only suitcase I owned at my friend Daniel's place, shook his hand, and drove to the courthouse in my old pickup. The newer car, the good one, was already parked out front. My ex-wife always liked to arrive early, liked to feel ahead of everyone. The day was warm for January, clear sky, the kind of morning that looks innocent, like nothing life-changing is about to happen. I stood outside the courthouse for a moment longer than necessary, breathing slowly. 3 years of preparation had come down to one hearing, one signature, one decision she thought she already controlled. My phone buzzed. "Margaret, room 3C. We're ready." I walked inside. Courthouses all feel the same. The hum of endings, paper shuffling, couples pretending not to look at each other, lives being split into legal language. Just another weekday for everyone except the people sitting inside those rooms. Through the narrow window of the courtroom door, I saw her already seated, confident, relaxed, her attorney beside her flipping through pages like this was routine, like lunch plans were already being made. Margaret stood beside me. "How are you feeling?" "Ready," I said, and I meant it. She touched my arm briefly. "Whatever happens in there, remember this. You already proved something important. You were never what they said you were." "I'm not trying to prove anything," I said. "I just want my life back." She nodded and opened the door. My ex-wife smiled when she saw me. That same smile she used to wear when she thought She was smarter than everyone in the room. I didn't return it. I took my seat. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a few people in the gallery. Her new partner sat in the front row, dressed too well for the occasion, confidence already cracking around the edges. The judge entered, calm, experienced, unimpressed. The agreement was read aloud, slowly, methodically. House, cars, business, accounts, everything transferred to her name, exactly what she had demanded. I watched her posture straighten with every item listed, like she was being crowned. The judge turned to me. "You understand that by signing this agreement, you relinquish all rights to these assets?" "I understand," I said. "And you've had adequate opportunity to review the agreement with counsel?" "I have." Her attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I'd like it noted that my client was advised to obtain an independent financial review, but elected to waive that right." The judge looked at my ex-wife. "Is that correct?" She didn't hesitate. "I built everything. I know what it's worth." "Then please sign the waiver." She did, quickly, confidently. That was when I noticed her lawyer's face change. He was flipping pages now, faster, tension replacing arrogance. His finger stopped on one page. 47. Color drained from him. "Wait," he whispered, "wait." But she was already signing the final page. Done. The room shifted. "What's wrong?" she asked, annoyed. The judge looked up. "Is there an issue, counsel?" Her attorney swallowed. "There's a clause." "What clause?" my ex-wife snapped. He handed her the document, pointing. I watched her read, watched understanding drain from her face line by line. The clause stated plainly that the party receiving the assets assumed full responsibility for all debts attached to them, all of them. Her voice dropped. This says, I'm responsible." "Yes," Margaret said evenly. "Every loan, every lien, every obligation." Her new partner stood up. "How much are we talking about?" "Just under $5 million, Margaret replied. The courtroom went silent. My ex-wife shot to her feet. "This is fraud. He tricked me." The judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You signed a waiver stating you understood the agreement and declined further review. The debts were disclosed. You chose not to read." "I didn't know," she said, panicked now. "You chose not to know," the judge replied. "This court does not protect people from their own arrogance." Her partner backed away like he'd touched fire. Her mother stood up and left without a word. My ex-wife stood there alone, staring at the paper that had just handed her everything she asked for. She turned to me, eyes wild. "You ruined me!" I stood, slow and steady. "No," I said. "I stopped carrying what you refused to face." For years, she told me I was useless, that I didn't understand money, that I was lucky she kept me around, that I should be grateful. I looked at her once more, then away. The judge finalized the order, and just like that, it was over. I walked out of the courtroom with nothing on paper and everything in reality. Freedom doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like walking away while someone else finally carries the weight they built themselves. I'm not grateful. That's the first honest thing I felt when it was finally over. I'm free. And at 62 years old, for the first time in nearly a decade, I could breathe without feeling like someone had a hand around my throat. I touched the only thing she hadn't taken from me, a simple ring that had belonged to my father, worth nothing on paper, worth everything to me. My lawyer was already packing her briefcase, calm, efficient, like this was just another Tuesday. For me, it was the end of a life I had survived, not lived. I looked at my ex-wife one last time. I didn't hate her. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done letting her define me. "Wait," she said, standing up too fast. "We can fix this. We can talk." "No," I said. One word. Clean. Final. There's nothing left to fix. I walked out of that courtroom without turning back. I heard shouting behind me, her lawyer trying to calm her down, her new partner demanding answers. I didn't look. I was already gone. Halfway down the hallway, the noise got louder. Through the glass doors, I saw it unfold, her partner blocking her path, face red, voice sharp, numbers being thrown around, millions that weren't there, promises that had never been real. "I chose you," he shouted. "I burned bridges for you." She laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "And you're not even rich. You're worse than broke. You're buried." He stormed off, already on his phone, already looking for someone else to save him. My lawyer stood beside me, watching it all with the quiet detachment of someone who's seen too much human wreckage to be surprised. "In 30 years," she said, "that might be the fastest collapse I've ever seen." I didn't feel triumph, just exhaustion, like watching a storm finally pass after years of boarding up windows. She appeared in the doorway then, smaller somehow, older. Our eyes met. I felt nothing but relief. "Goodbye," I said, and I meant goodbye to the man I had been when I was with her too. 3 months later, the rest fell apart. I didn't follow it closely. People told me anyway. The house sold for less than the debt on it. The cars were taken back. The business she'd demanded was shut down piece by piece. Assets auctioned for pennies. What remained were loans with her name on them and no place left to hide. She moved into a small apartment. No staff, no prestige, just silence and bills. I moved into a one-bedroom place near the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Clean. Quiet. Mine. I bought second-hand furniture, cooked my own meals, slept better than I had in years. I went back to work, not at the level I'd once been, but honestly, slowly. A company that cared more about showing up than showing off. Within months, they trusted me with responsibility again. Turns out, when no one is sabotaging you, you remember who you are. My son stayed with me most weekends. We rebuilt something simple: walks, dinners, conversations without tension in the air. He stopped asking why his mother was angry all the time. Kids adapt faster than adults. Summer came, then fall. Life didn't explode into happiness. It settled into something better. Peace. A year later, she finally reached out. A text, short, careful. "I need to talk. It's about our son." I stared at the phone for a long time, not angry, not afraid, just aware. "Public place," I replied. We met at a small cafe. She looked older, tired, stripped of the armor she used to wear. For the first time, she didn't try to control the room. She apologized, not perfectly, not fully, but honestly enough. I listened, not because I owed her forgiveness, but because I no longer needed silence as a shield. When it was over, I stood up. "I hope you figure things out," I said, "for his sake." And I meant that too. Here's what I've learned if you're still listening. Sometimes the people who take everything from you don't realize they're also freeing you. Sometimes losing the house, the money, the status is the price of finally getting your life back. If you're being underestimated right now, if someone thinks you're weak because you're quiet, let them. Silence can be strategy. Patience can be power. I'm 62 years old. I don't have everything. But I have my name, my peace, and my future. And that's enough. I'm not grateful. I pressed my thumb against the old brass ring my father left me, the metal worn smooth from years of habit. It grounded me, reminded me I was still here. I was free, and for the first time in 8 years I could actually breathe without feeling like my chest was being crushed from the inside. I turned toward Eleanor, my lawyer, already sliding files into her briefcase with calm efficiency. Then I looked back at Harold one last time. The man I'd spent most of my adult life becoming smaller for. I don't hate you, I said. I'm not even angry anymore. I just refuse to let you define who I am for one more second. Daniel, wait, he said, panic cracking through his voice. We can fix this. We can... No! The word landed heavy and final. There's nothing left to fix. I walked out of the courtroom, my steps steady against the polished tile. Behind me, voices rose. Harold calling my name, his attorney trying to calm him down. Lydia, his new wife, demanding answers. I didn't turn around. I was already gone. I was halfway down the hallway when the shouting exploded. Through the glass doors of courtroom 3C, I saw Lydia blocking Harold's path, her face red, mascara streaking. $3.2 million, she yelled. You told me it was worth 10 times that. You promised Europe, a house on the river, retirement before 50. Lydia, listen! Harold reached for her arm. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Her laugh was sharp and broken. My brother warned me about you, said you were a fraud playing dress-up in borrowed suits, and now I find out you're not even rich. You're in debt. You're negative rich. Eleanor stopped beside me, watching with professional detachment. I've been doing this 30 years, she said quietly. This might be the fastest implosion I've ever seen. I thought watching the woman he left me for abandon him would feel satisfying. It didn't. It felt tired, like watching the final scene of a movie that should have ended an hour ago. Lydia stormed past us, already dialing her phone. Mom, it's me. I messed up. I need to come home. Harold stood frozen in the doorway, a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Our eyes met across the hallway. I felt nothing but relief. Goodbye, Harold, I said. Then I walked toward the exit, toward my son, toward whatever came next. Freedom, it turns out, doesn't announce itself. It just opens the door and lets you leave. 3 months after the hearing, Harold's empire finished collapsing. I heard about it in fragments from Mark, an old colleague who still had contacts in finance. Over coffee, he delivered the news like war reports. The house sold first, $600,000, not enough to cover the mortgage and the second lien. Harold walked away, still owing nearly $300,000 on a home he no longer owned. The luxury SUV was repossessed at dawn. Neighbors watched him stand in his driveway in slippers, shouting about lawsuits, until someone threatened to call the police. His holding company filed for Chapter 7 in March. Properties he once bragged about were auctioned off for pennies. The remaining debt followed him, almost $4 million. He moved into a one-bedroom unit near the highway. No concierge, no pool, no illusion. "And his job?" I asked. Mark shook his head. "Junior sales position, commission only. From CEO to entry level in under 100 days. I thought about the man I married, his certainty, his lectures about money, the way he used to say, I wouldn't survive without him. He did this to himself, I said. I just stopped shielding him from the consequences." Mark raised his cup. "That's the kind of revenge that doesn't rot you from the inside." Summer came quietly. My apartment stopped feeling temporary. My son's drawings covered the fridge. I grew herbs on the windowsill. The couch was second-hand, but more comfortable than anything we'd owned before. I went back to work full-time. Nothing glamorous, just honest work. By June, I was promoted. My manager said I had exceptional focus. I didn't tell him I learned that skill by surviving a marriage built on lies. My son was thriving. New school, new friends, soccer, laughter I hadn't heard in years. One afternoon at the park, he shouted, "Dad, watch this!" and attempted a cartwheel that collapsed into laughter. I clapped, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Peace. My phone buzzed, acceptance email, evening certification program. "What are you smiling about?" he asked. "I'm going back to school," I said. "Like me?" "Just like you." He thought for a moment. "Ice cream?" "Absolutely." That small life, that modest apartment, that ordinary joy. It wasn't a consolation prize. It was everything. Let me pause here for a second. Have you ever made a decision everyone thought was insane? Have you ever trusted yourself when no one else did? Because that's what this story is really about. Not revenge, not karma, not watching someone fall. It's about listening to the quiet voice that knows the truth while everyone else is shouting. For 3 years, I planned, I prepared, I stayed silent. And when the moment came, I was ready. Silence isn't weakness. Patience isn't surrender. And when people underestimate you, they hand you time. A year later, Harold reached out. The text came on a Tuesday evening. "I need to talk. It's about our son." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Public place?" The next day, noon, a cafe on Westheimer. I barely recognized him. The tailored suits were gone. He'd lost weight the wrong way. His confidence had drained out of him. "You look good," he said. "You look happy." "I am." He stared at his hands. "I'm not here to apologize. I know you wouldn't believe it." I waited. "I've been in therapy," he said. 6 months, and they say I need to take accountability." He swallowed. "I was a terrible husband, a worse father." The words hurt him to say. "I treated you like you didn't matter. I treated our son like an inconvenience." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want to try," he said, "to be his father, a real one." I studied him. The arrogance was gone. "I'll consider it," I said, "on conditions." That night, I sat on my balcony, city lights flickering. I thought about the man I used to be, afraid, silent, trapped, and the man I was now, still quiet, but no longer afraid. I set boundaries, therapy, steady work, supervised visits. One rule above all others: he would never speak badly about me to our son. He agreed. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. You choose who walks through. Whether he becomes a better man isn't my responsibility. My son and I will be okay. September came. New notebooks, new routines, homework side by side, laughter over the kitchen table. Work improved. My future finally felt like mine. One morning, walking my son to school, he asked, "Dad, are you happy?" I knelt and looked him in the eyes. "Yes, I really am." And as he ran toward his classroom, I realized something. This wasn't the life I lost. It was the life I built. So if you're watching this and you feel invisible, underestimated, or trapped, remember this. You don't need to fight loudly to win. You don't need permission to leave, and your moment will come. I'm Daniel. I'm 62 years old, and this is the story of how losing everything finally gave me my life back.